Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jandro the Resilient. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and on TikTok at Jandro the Resilient. I will see you over there. You'll get fitness, motivation, and plenty of more on the menu on those platforms. So I'm going to get right into it. I truly appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking the Brazilian path with me. Let's get into it. So back in 2019, May 24, 2019, my father passed away. And yesterday, May 24th, 2025, was his 6th-year death anniversary. And it had me really thinking about life. It had me really thinking about, number one, I was just as surprised how fast time went. Um, I was also surprised that COVID was, literally around the corner um, in late 2019. And I'm gonna get vulnerable in this video, but I really want to hone in on resentment and regression, the two R's, the double R's. Again, resentment and regression, and really why you need to let go of resentment, why you need to let go of regression. Also, you need to be able to recognize that you may be on that path. You may be on the path to regressing. You may be on the path because you're holding on to resentment towards someone else. And at the end of the day, you and I, we have to hold ourselves accountable for the decisions we make, for the decisions that we don't make, for the life that we have, the life that we want. And quite frankly, it's not easy, you know? Um, so I'm actually very curious if you had a father who was in prison, who died in prison, let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to ask you, what was one takeaway that you're aware from that experience? Because a lot of us have different takeaways, and I'm not really going to get into that in this video. I just really want to share my experience with that because it just, time flies, and I just cannot believe it's been over half a decade essentially, Um, so I'm gonna be looking at down at my notes. So if you see me looking up and down, that's why. And yes, I'm wearing the same black t-shirt that I have been wearing in the other videos. This is one of my favorite t-shirts. It's comfy, it's light, and it doesn't get too hot. And I'm actually going to be going on a walk after this. I had two massive burritos today, and I'm just ready to just at least burn, I don't know, 500 calories walking. I mean, something. I got to make up for it. Anyways, they're pretty good burritos. All right, man. So resentment, right? The weight of resentment that I was carrying before I had, I guess, reintroduced myself to my father and vice versa, there was a lot. Now, mind you, I grew up and became an adult without my father. I really had to stand up for myself, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. I really just had to become that kid, that kid that was super serious. And that's kind of why I have a certain personality I have today, where I'm just serious and I come off as responsible, quote unquote. Um, and I am responsible. I'm not saying that I'm not, but a lot of people always look at me and they're like, "Man, you're so serious, or you're so driven, or you got things in order." And it's like, thank you for that. I appreciate that. You know, that's a compliment. But growing up, I had a lot of resentment on my shoulders because of my dad, because of the situation that he put himself in, that eventually led to the situation that my mom and I were in. And I just was not happy. I would see other kids with their dads, I would see families together, and I never really had that environment. I never had that type of opportunity. So, if I ever become a dad, that's definitely going to be new to me, and it's definitely going to be something I want to, be able to provide to, my daughter, or my son. But I never had that, and that's okay. Like, I'm a grown up now. So, anyways, um, my dad went to prison roughly in 2002, and that was essentially the last time that I would ever see him. And I remember going into whether it was this prison, that prison, or the other prison. I remember seeing him and just visiting him, and it was just then I just stopped. I mean, I just stopped. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't really want to deal with him anymore. And it took me up until I was about 21, 23 possibly, where I decided that I needed to start visiting him. I needed to start seeing him, because I found out that he had prostate cancer a year before, about a year before. And in late 2019, I said, okay, you gotta make a decision, because I was living with so much turmoil in my heart, my soul, my mind. I said, you got to make that decision whether or not you want to live with this for the rest of your life. Because at the end of the day, you know, the past is the past, and you're being a slave to these chains of the past. You're being a slave to the circumstances. And that's when I changed my mindset to what's in my control. And what was in my control was the weight of resentment. And what do I mean by that, right? I mean that you have the ability to free yourself from that resentment. You have the ability to remove it. Okay? And it's only gonna be removed, or you're only gonna be able to remove it if you confront it. Separately, I always say that um, I love having the most difficult conversations. I like having them because it allows me to grow as an individual, allows me to grow as a professional, and it just allows me just to grow in general. So I embrace those difficult conversations. I embrace the difficult workouts that I do. I embrace the difficult situations that I put myself in. Not all the time. Let me just be clear. But it's one thing to embrace, and it's one thing to, I guess, indulge, right? And I'm all get into that. I'm not saying that I want to indulge in those activities. I don't. But, sometimes I do embrace them. So I said, okay, well, I got to have this conversation with him somehow. Like, I gotta see who he is, what he's done, and all that stuff, man. And so it was just one of those things where I had to let go. I had to let go. And finally, I decided to see him late December. Decided to meet with him, and I definitely let him know how I felt. But I was also mindful that he was a human being, that he was prone to mistakes, just like I was. And I said, you know what? You know, you did this, you did that, right? It was a lot of weight that was taken off my shoulders, a lot. And I'll definitely forever be grateful for that opportunity. Um, that a higher power intervened and was able to get me to do that. And for him, just acknowledging that, you know, um, acknowledging his decisions, right? Anyways, so that weight of resentment really just uh, disseminated. I mean, it wasn't there anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to encourage you, and that's the point I'm bringing it up, is because, if you have something that's holding you down, you really got to look within. You really got to be self-aware. You really have to dig deep and ask yourself, what is that one thing? And until you address that, you're not going to grow. Until you address that, you're not going to be able to go into the next level that you want to go into. And you got to recognize that. Okay? Time isn't waiting for you. Time is of the essence on these certain decisions. Ooh. Now, let me tell you something about resentment. Again, I'm looking at my notes here. There was a certain breaking point for me where I realized I gotta start I got to go confront this individual. I got to go confront my father and forgive him. And quite frankly, it was when I I started feeling something, right, man. Something in my heart, something in my soul. I couldn't, I couldn't live with myself because I said, if this is the way, if I'm gonna be holding on to this, I just can't do this. I can't live like this. And if you have certain thing that's nudging you, that's bothering you, that's hindering you from going on to that next level, you may want to ask yourself, and you just might want to address it again. Time is of the essence. So, you know, one important thing about this thing too is I did it for myself. I didn't do it for him necessarily. I did it because I needed to ensure I had peace. I needed to ensure I can forgive myself for feeling a certain way. And the only way that I could achieve that is to confront that inner battle that I was having. And obviously, he was alive, and I confronted him about that because, again, both of us had some sort of part in creating our internal battles or demons, whatever you want to say. So do it for you. You got to recognize that you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for, you know, person Y, person B, person A. You're doing it for yourself. And a lot of things in this life, if you don't realize it soon enough, a lot of people do things for themselves. So why shouldn't you? You know, why should you put yourself back? You should be putting yourself first, especially with resentment, especially with regression, things of that nature. You need to look at those two R's and see what is hindering you. Is it environmental factors? Is it physical factors? Is it lifestyle factors, right? I mean, all these potential determinants of regression are things that you need to look at. And that's exactly, at least what I did. All right. Now, I want to get into accountability. Um, because let me tell you, let me tell y'all. Accountability is one of the most powerful words in the English dictionary, and obviously the entire world. I know Jocko Willett, he talks about extreme ownership, right? He talks about owning and holding yourself to extreme accountability, because when he says ownership, he's talking about accountability. You know what I'm saying? And that's something you also have to recognize is, where am I falling short in holding myself accountable and holding extreme ownership about things? Now, there's been a lot of times in my life where I had to basically hold myself to extreme ownership, even for things I didn't cause, didn't do, um, that was just not of any origin related to me. And those times were not fun. They were not fun, because who gets hit with the stress? Me. Who gets hit um, with I don't know, anxiety, right? Who gets hit with worry, right? We all don't want to go through that. None of us do. But sometimes we have to. And again, I say just embrace it, go through it, because you're going to grow through it. That's the bottom line. So you got to take responsibility for your own healing, you know. And I think as men, especially one of my weakest points is doing things alone, doing things, having this like no lone wolf mentality, and that's not always a good thing. I look at certain individuals, and I often say, "Oh, you're super talented," or you work hard, but you may not be as talented, right? Or you're talented but you work very little. You don't work hard. So, what I'm trying to say with that is, you essentially need to just you need to recognize that you need to heal yourself, essentially. That's what I'm saying. Take responsibility for your own healing. Um, Sometimes it's black and white, other times it's not. There's a lot of gray areas. And that's just life. Now, I want to just close with this. When I had another reason why I had just chosen to try and get rid of this resentment and take all this resentment weight off my shoulders was because I wanted to live the life that I would want to live, right? I didn't want anybody holding on to how I lived, how I wanted to live. And quite frankly, my dad's decision, me pointing the finger at him for everything that's happened in my life, everything that my mom and I were going through, I believe I continued to point the finger at him, and I narrowly escaped allowing it to essentially shape my life, right? To shape my life. Because I was not going to take ownership of my life. I was not going to take ownership of the direction of my life. And I think that's where we all fall short on, is where we don't take ownership. We're not the captain. We decide to just let the boat float, and we're just cruising. We're just on cruise control. And I get it, man. Like, there's certain things where you can only control the controllables. I totally understand that. I respect that. And that's realistically, right? Again, you gotta be strategically patient. And I mentioned that in the past videos. At the end of the day, right? Forgiveness, letting go of this resentment, it really helped clear the air, really helped me gain clarity of what I wanted to do. And that is essentially the positive, the net positive of this whole thing, right? I just want to let y'all fellas know and gals that you just gotta let it go. But you need to address it. Make sure you address it within yourself, with the other person if you're able to, and just and continue being the best individual that you can be, the best version of yourself. We all go through a lot of challenges. I totally understand that. But just remember that, right? So, forgiveness isn't just about the past. It's about feeling your future. And if my story helped even one of you today, that's great. And if it didn't, that's also great. I mean, I just truly appreciate you listening to me and hopefully getting something out of it. Um, this is by no way throwing any type of shade to my dad. Um, he lived his best life. He did the best he could, and I appreciate him for everything that he did in my life. You know, because he was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was a good human being at the end of the day, right? And we all make mistakes, but it really is up to you to make the best decision that you can. And I want you to take away from this video, you know, think about something that you're possibly holding back. Think about something that you're potentially allowing you to hinder your progress. Think about something that is causing regression in your life. Because that's something at the end of the day you want to address. Stay resilient, build wisely, lead boldly. Andre the Resilient. See you in the next video. Like and subscribe. And I actually do have a free ebook on this topic. Link is in the description below. I love y'all. See you in the next one.